Matilda Dixon was once loved by every child in town, the kind old lady who'd trade lost teeth for gold coins. They called her the Tooth Fairy. But one night, her house burned down, leaving her face so scarred that sunlight itself became her enemy. She hid behind a porcelain mask from that day on. When two children vanished, the frightened townsfolk blamed her without proof. They hanged her in rage, only to find the kids alive the next day. With her final breath, Matilda cursed the town.
What I took before in kindness, I will take forever in revenge.
The story begins with a little kid pulling out a loose tooth. Later that night, after finishing a chat with his mom, the kid checks on the tooth he yanked out that morning. Then he notices something moving past the window of his second floor bedroom. When he tries to find out what it was, turns out it's just his friend. Guess this friend either owns a really tall ladder or seriously needs to reconsider their definition of normal visits. He came over to invite him to go swimming with some other friends tomorrow. Before climbing back out the window, the kid grabbed Kyle's tooth and placed it under his pillow. Turns out that was his very last baby tooth. So, according to him, he's officially not a little kid anymore. But later that night, a shadow moving around his room. Terrified, he hid under the blanket while keeping his flashlight on. A few moments later, he gathered the courage to pull the blanket down. And that's when a quick glimpse of a masked figure flashed before his eyes. It was the ghost of Matilda, once known as the Tooth Fairy. Luckily, Kyle turned on his flashlight, which just so happened to be this ghost's biggest weakness. He ran straight to his mom, but of course, she didn't believe him. Kyle even begged her to stay in a well-lit spot. Then, as his mom tried to prove to him there was nothing there, suddenly, well, being a kid, instead of helping his mom, he ran off and hid in the bathroom, bright as the glowing skin of a K-pop idol. He stayed hidden in there, and the ghost didn't dare enter. It just waited above the bathroom door like it was stalking its next snack. The next morning, his mom was found, well, let's just say, completely gone. And Kyle? People thought he'd lost his mind after he told them what happened, so they sent him to a hospital for rehabilitation. 12 years later, Caitlin, who used to be a little kid, had now grown into, well, let's just say, the blossoming stage of life. She had a younger brother, and it turned out he was being hunted by that same ghost, just like Kyle. But of course, no one believed him either. Meanwhile, somewhere else on the planet, we see a man who's turned his home into a flashlight museum. And yes, as you've guessed, it's Kyle, the kid everyone once thought had lost his marbles. Caitlin gives him a call, asking to meet with her and her brother, not to borrow money, but to ask for advice and guidance. Because what her brother was going through was almost identical to what Kyle had experienced as a kid. The next day, Kyle shows up at the hospital where Michael, Caitlin's younger brother, is staying. There, he talks with Caitlin and her brother and quickly realizes that Michael is being targeted by the exact same ghost. However, when asked about what happened back in his childhood, Kyle still keeps those details locked up tighter than a British biscuit tin at tea time. As he was about to head home, Kyle ran into an old childhood acquaintance, who just so happened to be Caitlin's current boyfriend. This guy insisted on dragging him to a bar for a few drinks. Reluctantly, Kyle agreed. At the bar, he realized that Larry and a few others, people who had also known him since childhood, weren't exactly fans of his. Apparently, thanks to gossip spread faster than free cake at a PTA meeting, the story going around was that Kyle had killed his own mother as a kid because he was crazy. But Kyle didn't care about any of that because he could feel the ghost's shadowy presence lurking nearby. One guy even tried to pick a fight with him. Instead of throwing punches, Kyle just walked out. Once outside, that creepy, someone's watching me feeling only got stronger. And then, the same guy from earlier attacked him, and the two of them tumbled deep into a forest as dark as a single person's dating history. In the middle of their scuffle, the guy spotted something perched high in the trees. Sensing the ghost's shadow closing in, Kyle bolted toward the nearest light, leaving the bar guy behind. And, well, The guy left alone became the ghost's next snack. When their buddy didn't come back to the bar for way too long, Larry called the cops to go look for him. Out in the middle of the forest, they suddenly heard the man's screams echoing from far away. They split up to figure out where the screaming was coming from. But just as they glanced left and right like they were about to cross the street, turns out the guy had already been called to the great beyond, and everyone assumed Kyle was the killer. Well, Kyle was the last one seen with him, and they'd been fighting earlier. Bad timing, Kyle. Kyle, who had just escaped from the forest, went straight to the hospital to check on Michael, Caitlin's younger brother. There, he ran into Caitlin, who was sitting by her brother's side while he slept peacefully. They chatted for a while. But a few moments later, the police showed up, arrested Kyle, and hauled him to the station. When they searched his bag, it was full of flashlights and enough sedatives to knock out an elephant. That made the cops even more suspicious, even though Kyle swore he didn't kill the guy. When Caitlin found out, she went straight to Larry, begging him to help get Kyle released. The next night, Caitlin was walking toward her brother's hospital room when she noticed he had locked himself in the bathroom. After a few tries, she finally managed to open the door, only to find her brother bleeding inside. It turned out he'd been attacked by that ghost while he was asleep, but the doctor insisted he had injured himself. The doctor then suggested they run a test, putting Michael inside a completely dark MRI room to help him face his fears. When Kyle walked out of the police station, he went straight to a store and bought every flashlight he could carry. Then he asked Larry to drive him to the hospital where Caitlin's brother was staying. Kyle was determined to protect Michael from the Tooth Fairy ghost. But halfway through the trip, Kyle realized Larry wasn't driving him to the hospital at all. He was taking him straight home. Apparently, Larry thought home delivery applied to people too. Larry told him that Michael would be fine and was about to undergo an MRI in complete darkness. The moment Kyle heard that, he forced Larry to turn the car around by pointing a gun at him. A few moments later, a shadow darted across the windshield, and they crashed straight into a tree. When Larry came to, he instinctively looked up and instantly regretted it. Larry was yanked and dragged away by the ghost. Kyle, having already made peace with the fact his friend was beyond saving, jumped into the car and sped off. He drove straight to the hospital to save Caitlin's little brother. Michael was just about to go through the MRI scan, inside a pitch-black machine. Right before they could put him in, Kyle burst in and told Caitlin to get him out immediately and away from the darkness. But before anyone could react, the police showed up and hauled Kyle back to the station. Again. At the station, Kyle was thrown straight into a cell. Inside, he kept trying to tell the truth, but the officer, who also happened to be his childhood buddy, didn't believe a word. Then, suddenly, the entire town went dark. The same officer walked into the records room to check on the power outage. He spotted a shadow moving and assumed it was just a buddy's dog wandering around. Because sure, why wouldn't a dog be hanging out in the police archives at night? Meanwhile, another officer standing in front of Kyle's cell noticed something and stepped closer to investigate. The other officers who heard the commotion rushed over to check the area. Moments later, the ghost began picking them off one by one. They tried shooting it, but bullets were useless. It feared only light. And since the police station barely had any lighting, the ghost moved around freely, attacking at will. In the chaos, Kyle struggled to force open his cell door and grabbed a flashlight. By the time it was over, every officer was dead, except for one, saved at the last moment by Kyle's beam of light. Kyle didn't waste time. He told his old childhood friend, the surviving officer, to follow him to the hospital and help save Michael. Moments later, the ghost made its way to the hospital where Michael was being treated. Michael and Caitlin, hiding under the bed, suddenly came under attack. Terrified, they bolted from the room, their footsteps echoing down the hallway. They ran as fast as they could, but the ghost was right behind them, closing in. Just as it was about to grab them, Kyle appeared out of nowhere, yanking them into the elevator at the last second. Because sometimes, the difference between life and death is whether the elevator doors close in time. Even inside the elevator, the ghost didn't let up. It attacked them and wrecked the lift. They managed to get out thanks to a doctor and some nurses who rushed to help. When the doctor actually saw the ghost with his own eyes, he instantly believed everything and decided to follow Kyle without a single question. Now, they had only minutes to escape before the hospital's emergency lights went out completely. Following Kyle's lead, they stuck close to any light source they could find. Like moths with a survival instinct. One by one, the lights began to go out, and the ghosts started attacking them one after another. By the time they reached the final staircase, every single light went dark, and the ghosts lunged at them. But at the very last moment, Kyle's old acquaintance from the police showed up and saved them. They rushed into a car and sped away from the hospital, heading straight for the power generator located inside the lighthouse. On the way there, they thought they were finally safe. But then, the ghost suddenly attacked, snatching away the doctor who had been helping them. It didn't stop there. It kept lunging at them until Caitlin shone her flashlight right at it, forcing it to vanish for a moment. When they finally reached the lighthouse, the first thing they did was refuel the generator. Then they rushed upstairs to turn on the lighthouse beacon. But the machine wouldn't start. That meant they had to hurry back down to fix it, fast because their lantern light was running out, just like our monthly salary near the end of the month. That's when they saw a leaking hose. Kyle quickly tried to fix it. But Matt, who was holding the light for him, wandered a bit too far into the shadows and suddenly, upstairs, Caitlin and Michael weren't in much better shape. Their lights had gone out, leaving only the dim emergency lamp. The ghost began to attack, reaching out to drag Caitlin away. That's when Kyle's inner heroic instincts, he hurled his oil lamp straight at the ghost. Seeing the light around them start to fade and the ghost slowly closing in, Kyle desperately tried to restart the lighthouse. Just as the ghost's shadowy hand was about to touch them, Michael rushed in to help. Together, they managed to bring the lighthouse back to life. The blinding beam made the ghost shriek in agony before vanishing, much like our wallet balance at the end of the month. But as Kyle went upstairs to check the lamp, suddenly,
Come on.
while struggling to break free, Kyle forcefully ripped off the ghost's mask, revealing it was covered in the teeth of all the children she had killed. Her skin was instantly scorched by the lighthouse's light, smoke curling off like burning paper. Kyle didn't waste the moment. He delivered a final punch, his fist wrapped in flames from the lighthouse lamp. The ghost screamed in agony before bursting into fire, and finally exploding into nothing. Yeah, that's how the story ends. This story reminds us that fear often comes from misunderstanding and prejudice. Matilda wasn't a monster at first. She became one because of injustice and hatred from those around her. It's a warning to never judge too quickly, to seek the truth before pointing fingers, and to remember that the hatred we plant today can grow into the terror that haunts us tomorrow. And, of course, always keep a spare flashlight. Thanks for watching until the very end. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you'll know when my next creepy story drops. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.